Hi everyone and welcome to the webinar today. I am Maddie from the marketing team here at Custora, and I'm here with our CEO Corey Pearson and Tommy Lamb, who is the Director of Loyalty and Retention at Teleflora. Tommy, thank you so much for being here today. So just a few housekeeping things before we get started. We've been doing these webinars now for a couple of years after we heard from our customers who are CRM and marketing teams that they really wanted to hear from their peers. They wanted to hear best practices, what marketing campaigns are working, what marketing campaigns aren't working. So we've been doing this to really for them. Secondly, please feel free to chat questions. You can chat it right through GoToWebinar, and we'll get to your questions at the end. If we don't answer a question, then we will follow up by email. Also, we will be raffling off a $50 Amazon gift card. So one lucky winner will get that at the end, and we'll also be offering a 1-hour strategy session with Custora. Also, we'll be sharing the deck and the recording after the webinar. So for anybody you know on your team who didn't make it, we can share it with them. We'll send it to you. Last logistics, Tommy and Corey are going to talk for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll leave about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So I'm going to hand it over to Corey right now, who's going to introduce Tommy.
Awesome, thanks, Maddie. And we're super excited to have Tommy joining us today. We've had the pleasure of working with Tommy over the years in a couple of different roles, and he's far and away one of the most seasoned CRM experts that we've worked with. Our interactions with him have been primarily with the email, the direct mail channels, a lot of good work with loyalty programs, the stuff we're going to talk about today, and really focusing on all kinds of areas, different focus areas within the customer lifecycle. Currently, he is the Director of Loyalty and Retention at Teleflora. He's previously held positions at Dermstore, BCBG, Lucky Brand, and well, I think that's a pretty robust introduction, Tommy. So thanks for being here. And before we get going, maybe just a couple of minutes on what's exciting to you in the CRM space right now, and any other introductory words you have for the group before we dive in.
For me, the most exciting / challenging things in the space right now has to do with scalability and automation, and really just trying to consolidate the experience for the customer across the different touch points.
Awesome, and we'll get into a few use cases around that today with your work that we've done together, but also feel free to kind of shower in some other related experiences you have on that theme. I think automation and the unified sort of customer experience is something that is on a lot of people's minds. It's an ambitious and somewhat fluffy, unfortunately, topic, and so hopefully today we can uncover some real concrete cases. All right, so jumping in, over the next probably about 40 minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about the concept of customer lifetime value and how CLV as a metric, how keeping an eye on that is really a key towards sustainable growth. Then we're going to shift into some concrete use cases of ways to improve CLV. So we'll turn the mic over to Tommy to talk a bit about some of the churn prevention programs that they've been running, some of the VIP cultivation, growing customer loyalty, and then a few different forms of advanced segmentation of using some of the types of segments around CLV and around the life cycle in a variety of different business contexts that have really driven some great results. And then we'll turn it over to some questions. So I'll start out with a couple of slides about CLV. We like to talk about how focusing on customer lifetime value is really a key to growth in today's challenging retail environment. And so to elaborate on that point, I think some themes that we all know very, very well, as a market has been getting more and more competitive, it's becoming more and more expensive to drive each incremental order. The days of super cheap keywords that drive a tremendous amount of traffic are kind of behind us now. And there's multiple reasons for that, but by and large, it's just a much more competitive world online than it was 10 years ago. And the way that we've been combating that as an industry has largely been trying to keep prices down. And that's led by, of course, like Amazon for certain markets and certain product categories. It's led by the consumer becoming more powerful and expecting promotions all the time and getting addicted to the promotional drug. But you put these two things together and you're spending more to drive people to the site to convert them, and then you're getting less of a return on each order. And the combination of that builds what we refer to as that shark graph, and it's why incremental growth is so hard today. We have exhausted. There are so many widgets, so many things that are out there to try to optimize each SKU and every email and to optimize the conversion rate, and all of those things are driving a lot of value. But what's next? What's the next growth opportunity? And to us, that's where CLV really comes into the picture. And so these are a couple of statistics that come from actually a Demandware study. But on the right, you see that about 25% of shoppers, as they surveyed a whole bunch of the retailers they work with, only 25% of shoppers come back and turn into repeat customers. But when you look at the total orders and total revenue from that repeat buyer segment, you see it's well over 50% of the business. And there's even more extreme versions that we've seen. 5% of our customers are driving 50% of our revenue. There's such a concentration of value that happens with those loyal customers that come back over and over again. And the metric that really describes those, where you see it pop, is the lifetime value of those repeat buyers is so much higher. And so when we talk about lifetime value, in our opinion, and a lot of the growth opportunities we see, it's kind of playing on the economics that this graph kind of touches the surface on. It's how can we find ways to get those top 5% of customers, expand that population, turn it into 6%, or get a couple more percentage of those customers who are mid-tier, kind of turn it into high-tier customers. Because those customers are so valuable, it can really have a tremendous impact on top line and bottom line growth. And we're starting to just touch the surface, I think, as a marketing industry of getting to the point where we can measure and automate programs that have a real customer focus as opposed to the channel focus that so many of our tools are built around today. So we talk a lot about the customer life cycle, and very high level description that Tommy's going to go into more detail with here. But of course, all the life cycle, every new relationship begins with the customer acquisition. And so one of the things that we probably won't go into so much today, but a valuable part of optimizing the life cycle, is acquiring great customers to begin with. But then we get into this mode of needing to grow loyalty and prevent customers from fading away. And there's a lot that goes into that. A little cheesy diagram here. We got to convert one-timers into two-timers. We got to convert the repeat buyers into loyal VIPs. And of course, like any relationship, sometimes things start to fade away. And there's various stages of customer churn. It isn't just like customer wakes up one morning, flips coins, peace, I'm out. Kind of happens over time where habits slowly start changing and customers start shopping, testing out the competitors a little bit. And so there's different stages, gradations of customer churn that you really ideally would like to kind of get in front of to design optimal programs. And so 2 and 3 here, the growing of loyalty and the preventing of churn, are the things that we're going to spend the most time today describing. So a couple of final notes here before we get into the case studies. Talking about things like the life cycle, and we are marketers, and so we need to measure things. And I mentioned this point about a customer focus instead of a channel focus. And one of the things that we are very big proponents of is that marketing organizations should keep their eye on a new handful of KPIs that describe the customer life cycle. So at a really high level, right, what percentage of your one-time buyers convert into repeat buyers, right? So there's some nuance in how to do that, and that, cohort effects and stuff. Won't get into too many details now, but broadly speaking, right, hey, 5% of our buyers convert. And when we have active buyers, how often do they buy on a given month, When we have customers who are fading away into the danger zone, how well do we save them, a churn prevention rate? The point is if you look across that spectrum of of the customer churns and the growing of customer loyalty, you can have metrics that describe how well your organization is doing in these things. And that really is a true north. As you start to implement a lot of the programs Tommy's going to talk about, you want to keep your eye on some of these North Star metrics. Those are the building blocks. It is by improving those things, by converting more one-timers into two-timers, that is the way in which you improve lifetime value, that you grow lifetime value. So, last thing here before Tommy gets into the case studies is we thought we would ask you guys all a question, which is, which customer lifecycle stage are you focusing your efforts in today, if any? And it's cool if, you know, none of the above. That's cool. That's kind of like what the last option here on the survey is for. But if you are focusing on certain pieces, go ahead and let us know. We'll let this poll be open for about 20, 30 seconds, and we'll see how the audience shapes up. When we say members, we mean like people that have signed up for, maybe you have their email, but they haven't bought yet. So that's what that first option is, members to one-time buyers. I saw a question pop up on that. All right, so let's reveal the grand reveal. So we got a lot of folks talking about converting one-timers into repeaters. We've got, I mean, side note on that, this sounds cheesy, but we literally just wrote a book on the one-time buyer problem. True story, not just marketing flow. And so for anyone who's interested in that, you can go to the website, custora.com/one and not done, all spelled, you know, like the words one and not done. There's a whole bunch of awesome material on that. High-value customer nurturing, we have a great case study on that. Reactivation and win-back. What's super interesting about that bucket, it is probably pretty common. A lot of you might not be focusing, but you might, focusing a lot of mind share, but you might have like a 90-day win-back program in place, or like, oh, you haven't bought in 100 days, and therefore you get a promo. A lot of improvements to get away from kind of that rule-based generic approach that Tommy will share a little bit to really ramp up the quality of those kinds of programs. And for the few of you who aren't really focusing on life cycle stages, hopefully today, as Tommy digs into some of the details and the ways that they've really brought some of these programs to life, we will get you pretty excited about doing so. Cool. So getting back into the deck. Let's talk first about churn prevention, because we had a really cool case study here working with Tommy on this. And I talked a little bit just now about the rule-based approach to churn. Here's an interesting diagram where if you had two customers and one of them was on a cadence, we're talking about Tommy and Teleflora, right? Some of their customers buy flowers all the time, once a month, right? Or even more so. Imagine customers that are buying like, a couple times a month or even once a week. Other customers kind of just buy once every few months. The traditional retailer approach to a churn prevention program is, well, let's set a timeline, say 90 days, and if you haven't bought in 90 days, you're eligible for the program. But the problem is for that weekly buyer, or the person who is actually buying, going to Teleflora every 7 days, waiting 90 days for idle time is really a shame, because something, if you were actually spending the time and energy to like literally watch every single customer, you would have known after 15, 20 days that something was wrong. And when you go back to that demandware graph, right, those customers that are buying every week, those are the ones that are part of that 5% of the business driving 50% of the revenue. You don't want to wait too long to find those guys. And on the other hand, you can set the rule too short. For people that only buy flowers on Mother's Day, if you're quiet for 90 days, that isn't necessarily a time where you're like, hey, I want to send you a promo, get you addicted to the promo drug. That might be normal. Maybe we want to focus on some cross-sell stuff, but we don't necessarily want to, lead off with the promo before we have to. And so there's this notion of using some advanced analytics, some machine learning. Effectively, think of it like pattern matching, of understanding, hey, this person's veering off their own cadence. And that's kind of step one of taking a churn prevention or reactivation program to the next level is just knowing who actually is at risk right now. And what you really want to do, if you think, hey, today, if we are saving 1 out of 100 customers in the danger zone, or 1 out of 20, whatever your rate might be, the question is, you can see in this, tomorrow we've colored the head in of the second person. It's if you can slightly improve the churn prevention rate. If today you're saving 1 out of 100 and tomorrow it's 2 out of 100, or today you save 4 out of 100 and tomorrow it's 4.2 out of 100. The reality is, if we think about the customer life cycle, every month people are flowing into the danger zone. And so any slight improvement, you're not just winning in the moment, when you send that first campaign. It's the gift that keeps giving, because every single week new customers enter the danger zone, and you're improving a conversion rate here that's going to reap benefits throughout the entire year. So there's all kinds of stats. Some of the stats make your head spin because you're like, man, how did they figure out that stuff? But the numbers actually do make sense in certain businesses. So when you're talking about saving, a 1% improvement can improve profit margin by 125%, or 550%, right? Hey, if right now one of those 5% churn, right, the 5% goes down to 4%, that's like 10% of your revenue, right? So like there's a lot of ways these numbers can show, but because of that gift that keeps giving type of mentality, it's all it's the same kind of concept we're honing in on here, which is you want to take those cherished customers and make sure that none of them leave. And any improvement to the conversion rate of keeping those folks engaged just has a wonderful, wonderful ripple effect in terms of growth. So now let's shift. I've talked enough. Let's shift a little bit into, so what do you do? So it's one thing for us to say, hey, great. So, Custora, obviously, we're a software platform that's helping Tommy automate some of these programs. And so we have some of those capabilities that say, hey, here's who's at risk. But that's not enough, and you all know that. It's not just enough to say, hey, cool, we know which customers are at risk right now. For in order to actually do something with it, like knowing is half the battle. I just realized I cited some G.I. Joe, which I'm kind of proud of. But knowing is really only the first step. And so how do we then take that, and how does someone like Tommy put together a program to go from, hey, okay, I know what's happening now. What can I do to figure out what works, and how can I iterate on that? And so, Tommy, maybe now is kind of a good time for me to pass the mic over to you as we talk about kind of the way you initially just started thinking about the different stages of churn and how you started putting together your churn prevention program at Teleflora.
Sure. In this industry, in this space, Teleflora is challenged with differentiating itself from the 1-800-Flower, from the Books, from FTD. In reality, we are the only company in the space that provides hand-delivered, hand-arranged, ready-to-display bouquets 100% of the time. And we found that a lot of our customers forgot who they even ordered from, because this product is not for the person buying, it's a gift to someone else. So a lot of times we struggle with top-of-mindedness and repeat rate, because yeah, they might buy some flowers, but they forget who they bought from. And so with churn prevention, it lets us address the people who have come before and are cycling out of their usual purchase cycle, and reminding them, hey, here's our value proposition. Here's what we're trying to say to get you to come back. For all of the recipes sent by Custora, we diverged from our traditional creative language. We use more social images. It's a very different look than our traditional emails, and we did that purposefully in order to increase response rate and move the needle for these customers before we lose them completely. I kind of cheat because this is my second time with Custora, so all of our creatives and all of our promotions were already coded and waiting until our data was validated upon launch, and then we just turned on the switch.
And talk to us for a minute about, we have on the screen here that customers kind of go through a cooling down phase. So then you're like, okay, they're a little at risk, highly at risk, lost. I mean, the equivalent of that would be that weekly buyer. It's like, well, maybe if they miss 2 weeks, it's like, that's a little unusual. They're cooling down. But maybe 3 or 4 weeks, it's uh-oh, and then the uh-oh, alarm kind of continues to rise as you see they've veered further and further off. But with that mentality, how did you start thinking? I know one of the questions we always get from our customers is, okay, so if I have that in front of me, what do I do with that? Now that I have this granular, view of where people are, what makes for an effective program with that in mind?
Yeah, so, obviously the cooling down people are more likely to come back, and so they typically need a lower offer, like maybe 10%, maybe 15%, and then that offer scales up as you move down the funnel or through the segmentation. What's nice is that when we launched, we had already done testing with our marketing emails to say, okay, well, do dollar offers or percents work better? All right, well, we learned from that, and so we rolled out with our churns with percents and then tested again into dollars within each of the segments. So cooling had a couple different emails that would go out, at risk had a couple different emails that would go out, and because maybe our lapsed customers respond more positively to a dollar offer rather than a percent because less math is involved. And so then we sent that for a few weeks, found the learning, killed the one that lost, found a new one to optimize and test into, and it's just a monthly process for us with a quarterly audit and then an annual redo of all of the merch and creative.
Gotcha. And I'm just going to cycle the presentation to the next slide, which shows some of the creatives talking about. And I think you just touched on a topic that is really interesting and kind of exemplary, but maybe not so easy for some firms to get off the ground, which is sort of the way that you iteratively tested these things. Can you talk a little bit, and I know you say you cheat that, okay, well, here's this flow, this kind of cooling off funnel that people are going to go through. Did you run some initial tests up front all across the board? Like in each stage, did you think of, well, let's try percent and dollar at every stage along the way? Were testing all at once, testing a little bit up front? How did you think about how to go about the iteration so that you could find the optimal tactics and the optimal creatives throughout?
Well, I think that's one of the best things about Custora is, so we have one team working on validating the data with our data warehouse and our analytics team, and then we have the other team working with me on creatives and first steps and basically the low-hanging fruit. So we still have weekly calls to go over our results and plan new testing, and Custora is a wealth of information around best practices, what's worked for other clients, what doesn't work, what they would advise against or for. You can see actually in this slide, the most out-of-the-box version of our email is the one on the left, and the most traditional, the one before all of our testing and optimization, is the one on the right. You can see it doesn't have any background images, and we found that our customers respond much more strongly to bouquets with background images. It gives them context. But yeah, it's really a lot of hand-holding. It's much more of a partnership than a piece of software to me, and that made all the difference. It was not a challenge at all. You just rolled out with 20 emails, and Custora helped you figure out what to do next.
Awesome. And as you went through that, anything surprising? I think one question that we often get is like, man, customers are just overwhelmed. Everyone's getting a million discounts from a million brands all the time. How do you stick out through the noise? Anything surprising? Like, were the results as you would expect, where bigger the discount, bigger the response, or were there some nuances that that popped for certain customer groups or certain life cycle stages there in the churn spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, just with promotions, In 2015, a test was done here that indicated all of our customers preferred dollar offers. Then I tested in 2016, and the test indicated percents. So then we tested both through all 4 different levels of churn, and they were all different. I mean, obviously there's 2 options and there's 4 things, so some of them repeated. I believe the first and third tier preferred percent, but then the second and fourth preferred dollar, which I was surprised at.
When you saw something like that, I mean, what went through your mind? Is it like, oh, that's crazy? Like, have you been able to uncover why? Like, are there like certain types of users or any hypotheses you have as to why that would be the case?
Initial hypotheses, but we need to test it because we haven't had enough time, is seasonality. I'm wondering if dollar offers resonate more with a customer when the email volume is higher because they're inundated and it's a quick, is $10 enough for me, yes or no? Whereas percents take a little bit more thought, like, oh, it's a $59.99 bouquet, but you're giving me 20% off. How much money is that? I want to see what the test results look like outside of the holiday period, because we ramped up with Custora in August, and then we were September, October, straight into holiday. So we didn't get a lot of time to just sit back and look at stuff. We were testing in holiday, which only lends itself to the capability of Custora in that we've seen such good results despite it being a holiday season. So these messages and these creatives going for people, even though they're being inundated with all of the holiday sends, still manage to provide incremental revenue.
Awesome. And on the next slide here, I think we have some of the results share that you're able to share in terms of the relative lift of revenue per user in these different buckets. And anything when you look across these, I think, you know, the thing that pops to me is, well, looks like at the very early stage of cooling down, you're seeing a good bump. A little further away, as they really start fading away, the things you've been testing are doing a really nice job of creating a lift. But at risk, I mean, we're making a little bit of a dent, but we seem to not be capturing a lot of people in that part of the funnel. Do you have any hypotheses there of what's going on and things that you're looking to try to improve that?
Well, we were a little bummed at the at-risk lift. It wasn't as high as we thought it would be. And working with our manager over at Custora, we think that it was more, that it has to do more with the relationship messaging or lack thereof. We tested offers and we know what offer works, but we think it needs to be a little bit more with, we miss you, here's why, you know, why have you shopped with us before? Maybe a value proposition around the brand, like why did you choose Teleflora to begin with? So we're going to test into that in the next few weeks.
Awesome, awesome. So that's great, and I think I know the reason that we've always enjoyed working with you is these types of conversations of, hey, what are we doing in this stage of the life cycle, and really how this could then even, you know, further develop as, hey, for people who are cooling down, let's think about our customer segments, right? Because some people buy flowers only on certain holidays, and some people are buying them more for work reasons. And like any business, right, the things that people buy, there's a lot of segmentation within these categories, but the whole goal of working together and collaborating on these things is to get more of the conversation around these types of brainstorms and less of the conversation kind of in like the bogged down nature of list management and measurement that that technology can lend a hand with. So let's switch gears a little bit, Tommy, and talk about some of the other programs. If we think back to that little life cycle diagram, we had the churn prevention, and we just kind of talked about some good lift that you're seeing through the various stages and the iterations you've gone to recapture people as they start fading away. Now let's talk about the other side of growing loyalty and cultivating these wonderful shoppers, that top 5, top 10% customers. We have in Custora speak, we automatically kind of tag customers into platinum, gold, silver, but in every org, they're called something different. Some people use metals, some people use fish, to describe, and the whales are the good customers. The point is, I think the reality is in every business, the very top customers, top 1, top 10, top 25% are just so darn valuable. And so talk to us a little bit, Tommy, about how you've been thinking about these campaigns and the kind of stuff that you've done.
Well, we're looking to kind of redo our current loyalty program at Teleflora, and so this was an invaluable stopgap while we go back to the drawing board and work on something a little more interactive. But this would never go away, even when we launch our loyalty program, because it's a different type of messaging. It's more appreciation rather than, oh, you spent this much, now you get a reward. So it's still very different. We again wanted to leverage imagery and a design aesthetic that was very different from our traditional Monday, Wednesday, Friday emails. And, oh, by the way, all of these triggers or recipes are deployed on off days when we aren't sending marketing emails to the customers. And then because these people like our churn, we wanted to give them more options. We didn't want to take them, say, to bestsellers or the homepage. And so through testing, also with Custora, we found that multiple CTAs, and those CTAs in particular, outperformed having one or other CTAs. And so that's what we rolled out, not only with just the Custora recipes, but also our marketing emails.
Gotcha. And as you thought about some of these triggers, right? So you have, of course, your regular email calendar. It's going out the door. And now you're thinking about these off days, which is kind of step one. It's like, all right, I know we want unique messaging. We got to find a time where it's going to shine through. I'm just going to advance to the next slide here and talk about a cultivation campaign for those top 5% of customers. And I think we surfaced a bunch of information for you that might have kicked off some really interesting brainstorms on what you did and kind of how you thought about it. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about kind of your deep dive into these customers and how that kind of sparked to build these triggers and why you picked the triggers that you picked and that sort of thing.
Well, we thought it was really interesting that, they're supposed to repeat 200% more frequently. That's crazy. And they still over-index with affiliates. I mean, why would our most valuable customer come through affiliates? That's unusual to me. And then the fact that they love our keepsakes and our everyday. So to us, that says that it isn't the people who shop in Christmas or fall or Mother's Day or Valentine's who are the most valuable. It's the people who shop every day. And what value have we conveyed to these people that keeps them coming back? And what learnings can we take from that group and extend it to say, our lower level customers in hopes of moving them up?
Gotcha. Awesome. And here is an example of I think we showed a little bit of this picture before, but with the goal to kind of convert people into these super high value buckets, we kind of triaged it and thought about the top 5% and then those folks that are right on the edge of the top 5%, and then some results. So talk to us a little bit about how you got this thing off the ground, if you had to build creatives, like what was the planning process and how long until those results came in, and kind of where is the mindset for you now too as you think forward about these types of programs?
Well, I think that this like churn prevention is really just table stakes for any company. You need to be addressing these different customer segments, and you need to be looking at your customer base through these different filters, if you're not already. And all of these creatives, everything was done in parallel while we were setting up Custora, and it was literally well, it wasn't drag and drop, sorry. That functionality is not the same for this interface, but it seriously is a drop-down menu. And then you click the list that you wanted to go to. Again, total hand-holding with your client relations person. And you press send. It's mindlessly easy.
And results is an interesting topic too that we probably should have taken a step back. I think there's so many ways to talk about results, and it can be a little confusing sometimes with concepts of attribution and how all these things work together. So one thing that we always are talking about at Custora, and the way that all these results that Tommy is sharing now, we talk about lift in a user. The way that we calculate that is via holdout groups. And so if there are, make a simple example, 1,000 customers this week that are eligible for some churn prevention program, what we can do is automatically hold out, say, half of them. Keep the example simple again, where half of them get business as usual emails. They don't get this different email you're testing, and then half of them get the treatment, the special email, the special offer. And then after the fact, you can really say, look, everything about these 1,000 people was exactly the same, except for this group on the right. They got the special email. So it's a much more fair way to say, I don't know if it was first click, last click, in between click. I don't know if they looked at their email at work and then came home and looked at 16 devices in the meantime. None of that really matters. What really matters at the end of the day is, hey, here's the group I took. The only difference between these two is they got this action, and those guys spent, or those women spent 10% more revenue per user or profit margin per user. So holdout groups aren't the answer to every single attribution challenge in the marketing stack, but when you are directly marketing a group of users, the holdout group methodology is what's behind all of the lift metrics that Tommy is sharing, and that's kind of part of just the default functionality as that you should think about putting in play when you are doing this sort of campaign. All right, so we talked a little bit about these automated programs that you have in place connected to your email, connecting Custora to your ESP to power VIP cultivation, to power various aspects of churn prevention, keep customers engaged. But there's a few other use cases, I think, where you've blended together not only some of the functionality of Custora, but some of your interesting experience just over the years with tricks of the trade you've learned that really drive a lot of value that I think the group would be really interested to hear. So the first one is how you kind of put together this notion of CLV and weather-based segmentation. So talk to the group about this. This was a really cool campaign.
Yeah, so back when I was at Lucky Jeans, it's an omni-channel company, so you have to deal with outlets, with retail locations, and your site and your online store. So in the winter, a lot of the stores have to close because of bad weather, but our customers might not know that. And so there we sent, and it was very manual because we didn't have this software at the time, but pulled zip code-based email lists to send out emails to those people saying, don't go to the store, shop online, yada yada. Well, here we don't have our own stores, we're online only, or we're effectively the E24 of florists. And so we thought, what different way can we message our customers during a very high volume, highly promotional time period around Christmas? And we thought, well, maybe bad weather. So we took that day a look at the weatherchannel.com, and I pulled all of the states with a lot of snow cover and pulled that segment down and then layered over it a future high value from Custora's predictive algorithm. And then we created a new creative completely devoid of product, but much more about the holiday message. So don't go outside, it's a snow day, and it was an image of wool socks around a fireplace. And that email did amazingly well. And again, I think it's just a testament into what different ways can you talk to your customer and talk to them in a relevant way. And in this case, it was about the weather that they were going through at the time.
Awesome. Awesome. Struggling to get the word awesome out of my mouth. The next, another kind of similar example, as you were thinking of relevance, and you kind of already talked a little bit about how you got Custora up and running in the late summer, kind of a little before the holiday season, but you also did some pretty interesting stuff thinking about affinity groups, and leveraging some predictive or advanced analytics to just uncover the shopping behaviors of customers that you put in play over the holiday. So share a little bit about that. I mean, not everyone on the call is from your specific industry, but I think everyone on the call that is a retailer thinks a little bit about product affinities and how to best leverage those, especially in key times of the year like holidays.
Yeah, so an easy win to us, common sense really, is addressing people who have a high affinity for key holidays. In this case, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. We have another one that's ramping up for Valentine's. We'll do another one for St. Patrick's, and so on. For us, it's a twofold benefit. Not only does it make us look more relevant and aware of the customer's preferences and behavior, but it also improves top-of-mindedness for the brand, because then we're not just hammering them with the same message over and over again. And again, this is a good example of our social images that we're trying to use more. One thing that we're going to test into, however, is the revenue lift that we saw for Christmas was not as high as Halloween or Thanksgiving, even though Christmas is a much bigger holiday for us than the other two. So going into Valentine's and Mother's Day, we're going to feature more products as well as the social image, just to reinforce the breadth of offering that we have as a company.
Yeah, and I love some of these examples too, because it's, I think what makes things work, it's not just a matter of knowing the predictive affinities of customer groups. You know, you're talking about holidays, social images, you know, like what kind of tactics do you say when you know that stuff? And I'm sure in the war rooms over there, you know, you guys are thinking about what the competitors might be doing and how they're marketing and how you differentiate. I think as marketing vendors, sometimes we over highlight or try to oversell, hey, when you have this one magic thing, it prints money and it prints, you know, magical returns. And I think anyone on the retailer side knows that it's not really quite the case. And I really love some of the examples you're diving into here, because, yeah, you know, obviously you're leveraging these things as inputs, but they're inputs into the strategies you're making to connect with your customers at different times of the year and at different stages of the life cycle. And that's really what it's all about. You know, the tech folks like us are really more the enabling layer here. So very cool case studies. All right, so we talked a little bit about this, but just to give you another moment, Tommy, you get some of these programs off the ground, you see what works, and a couple times today you said, hey, the next thing we're testing into. So we have this picture on the screen of crawl, walk, run, you know, and it's a diagram of maybe starting with your churn prevention, you know, kind of start with one size fits all. Obviously, you're being particular about which customers are in which zones of the danger, you know, which danger zone they're in, but then you might break it down by the high value, mid value, low value, and try different tactics. And maybe you break that down even further based on the category affinities and so on. And that sounds great, but I think there's also a kind of a constant question. For example, a couple times today you talked about creatives. And of course, when you got started, we said, hey, here are the few creatives that if you can build these, we'll go to town with them. But as you continue to iterate on these and you're thinking about connecting for different times of the year and different, you know, stages of the life cycle, how do you balance just the operational burden of putting these things together? How do you think about that? Because obviously everyone would love a super robust program, but how do you get from, you know, step 1 to step 10 there?
It takes a team. It doesn't take a team to run Custora, but for me, it takes a team to bounce ideas off of, to brainstorm, to think about the next steps. So we have an amazing client manager, Sarah, and we talk to her every week, and whenever you think you have all of the things running that you could possibly have, there's new things to do and try. And I think that is a testament to the value of this type of marketing, how batch and blast is dying slowly. And it even though I've worked with Custora in a couple different industries, in businesses, and over a bit of time, there's still new things to try and new things to do and new things that we think of on a weekly basis, really. And so we're testing our marketing into the value of the customer. So high, medium, and low. We're now, what products do we feature? Do we feature different products? Does a higher AOV mix in an email or even direct mail move them up market? We are actually using Custora not just in email, but also in direct mail and through other digital channels. I work closely with our director of acquisition. And so we have a postcard that we're sending out for Valentine's that has high AOV and low AOV products, and we use Custora's segmentation tools to help us determine who we're going to mail. That should be really fun.
Awesome. All right, so we've got pretty much right on time here. We've got some time for some questions, and some have been already coming in. The quick recap, just to kind of emphasize some of the big takeaways. The notion of lifetime value and using it, thinking about those top 5% and the inordinate amount of revenue they drive, and how to capture and hold on to those great customers, how to cultivate programs to get more people turning into those customers. Those were the first couple of use cases Tommy shared. And then he talked about some other applications of CLV and other related predictive or advanced analytics, insert your favorite word there, but how do we think about leveraging that within holiday campaigns, or layering on CLV with some ideas about where weather, and how people might be tuned in, and the emotional state that customers might be in certain regions. So all kinds of applications there that are driving really significant, often double-digit revenue per user growth. We often talk about there's a whole landscape of opportunities. I keep emphasizing this high-value customers fading, but really there's if you think about that platinum, gold, silver, bronze, you want to turn bronze into silver and silver into gold. You want to take your high-frequency, low order sizes and get them ordering more. You want to take your high AOV, low frequencies, and you want to get them coming more often. There's so many areas. And when you think of the life cycle and where certain people are as you kind of nurture them into that promised land of the top 5%, and it's a thing that's really driving sustainable, the gift that keeps giving type of growth, given the nature of how customers flow through those stages. And the other point that Tommy was just talking about is measurement and the next step. We kind of look at this as a never-ending process. You might start by just simply getting something running in each of these life cycle stages, but you find wins and then you build on top of it. You further segment, you find more wins, and you further segment, and you find more wins. But every time you do it, it's not really extra work, right? You're building on the building blocks. You're building like a tower of awesome, a really robust system for each stage of the life cycle. And so the notion of just getting that mentality of, hey, we're going to put an approach in place here to constantly measure, constantly segment, constantly measure. The fun part is where tech can help is it makes those steps easy. It's easy to measure. It's easy to test. It kind of puts the burden on the collective group then to say, hey, now we've got more mind share for how the heck are we going to get through the noise? How are we going to connect with these customers? But that's really the fun stuff. All right, so why don't we jump to some of the Q&A here. And Tommy, I'll tee some of these up for you, and then some of them might be more targeted towards the Custora side. The first question here, how have you thought about this, Tommy? So there's a question from the audience that says, how have you guys thought about, there's this notion that email is becoming less of a direct response vehicle and more of an assist vehicle, right? That people aren't clicking on emails and directly ordering so much. So I guess question one is, Have you seen that? And then if so, how are you thinking about email marketing in general and how it's changing? Are you agreeing with the mindset that for your business it is more of an assist? And if so, do you measure different things? What's happening with email in you guys?
That is exactly what we're seeing. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I believe there was an article that came out last week on Forbes that was talking about just email fatigue in general and how a lot of industries and businesses are seeing a decrease in email performance year over year, despite being smarter and better about their email marketing. I think ultimately it just is another nail in the coffin for the batch and blast approach, which we are totally guilty of doing still, because whenever you need to dive for dollars, you crank out an email send, and it's really going to take a paradigm shift in how email is measured and how it's looked at. Again, what do you look for email to do at this point if you're acknowledging that it is becoming more of an assist? It's really going to fall back onto automated, triggered, highly, highly relevant emails featuring products browsed at the right time with the right promotion, maybe no promotion. That whole journey to having that one-to-one relationship with the customer is just more critical than ever.
Great. We have a couple of questions that are more of a kind of under the hood mindset. One is about how do you identify the purchase frequency and cadence and how users are cooling down within an industry that has such strong peaks. So for example, seasonality, Mother's Day for Teleflora or Black Friday for an apparel company. How does that kind of get in the way of a simple understanding who buys on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis? And there's another question that's kind of related, at least in a family of modeling, that's saying like, hey, for a brand new customer that you don't have a lot of data points on compared to someone who's been around together, how do you think about CLV and understanding, this notion of CLV is cool because it's longitudinal, but what about the brand new customers? I think the answer in both of those, the modeling, the advanced analytics, machine learning, predictive analytics, et cetera, that's what the models are supposed to kind of get their handle on. And so sure, a very simplistic model would just look at how many orders has the customer made and how long have they been here. Well, that's their average inter-purchase time. But of course, the real world has things like seasonality. All of that has to go into what I loosely described as the pattern matching, right? So there's mathematical ways to approach the notion that, okay, we can't just say you've been here for 2 years and you've made 10 orders, so 5 orders per year and equidistant across months. Like, people have bunchiness and people order a lot in certain times of the year, seasonality wise, and so that's all part of the pattern matching, the observations that these models make as they learn from the data set and what's there. So the short answer is like, yeah, the models have that covered, but there's a whole lot you can talk about there. The other notion of new customers versus repeat customers, it's certainly true that if you have a repeat customer who's made 10 orders, you have a whole lot of data. You know exactly the kind of stuff they like and how often they buy. The challenge comes for that customer who just made purchase number one or two. And again, what you're trying to do there, the models get strong when they can leverage all of the data points, the behavioral data points. Well, what did they buy? What channel did they come from? What else did they look at when they were on the site? There's all these kinds of things. What time of the year was it when they made that first purchase? All of those little data points kind of help you clue in and kind of hone in on a prediction on, well, with all these things combined, 9 out of 10 customers I've seen with that combination of data points turned out to be this type of shopper. That kind of probability-based pattern matching approach is what happens to get a good pulse on having sharp predictions even when you have a sparse amount of data. Okay, so there's another question here around the how you thought Tommy, right, as you started putting some of these programs in place. I think we just have a couple minutes, so this might be the last question. We'll see. But you put these programs in place, and we talked about holdout groups and measuring incremental lift. Was there a business as usual kind of approach you were using for some of these programs, or was the business as usual simply whatever the daily emails were? So when you had a holdout group, right, make a concrete example, 1,000 customers are at risk, all right, I'm holding out 500 of them to get business as usual, and 500 are getting the special Custora campaign. What did the 500 holdout get? Did they still get the daily email? Did they get a different type of churn email? How did you think about what to do with the holdout group?
Yeah, the holdout group did not receive any Custora email. We haven't gone into testing maybe offer, no offer, but that is on our roadmap for Q2. It's hard for us to do to get really clean testing because we went straight into holiday, and then with Valentine's it kind of stops everything. So we have a very short window in March and April to do testing before we hit Mother's Day, and it's in those months that we're going to test a no email plus an email with no offer plus the email with the offer in all of our churns.
Gotcha. That's awesome. And so right now, these incremental lists were saying, hey, these folks are just going to get whatever the daily emails are outside of Custora, typical email calendar. They'll still get those emails, but the audiences surfaced by Custora were sort of like the ones that got these incremental sends, and that's where the measurement came through.
Yep.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, I think we just hit the 3 o'clock window. For those of you who asked questions that we didn't get a chance to answer, we'll try to follow up with you and still provide those answers. I know we'll be sharing out this webinar. Thanks to Tommy. Always awesome to get a chance to talk about the work we're doing together. We're really excited to get into those follow-up tests as we dig in Q1, Q2 this year. And thanks to everyone for attending. Probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. We would obviously love to talk to any of you who are thinking about putting these programs together so that we can do our very own joint case study like this in a few months. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if that's something you're interested in. And with that, thank you, Tommy, and hopefully we'll talk to a lot of you very soon.
You bet. Have a good week.